We did so great in serving the customer and finding product market fit early. But then all the challenges came in and it was very messy and very hard, particularly because we were growing fast. I made a lot of bad decisions against my gut.
Welcome to LaunchPod, the show from LogRocket, where we sit down with top product and digital leaders. Today, our guest is Adam Schoenfeld, CEO and co-founder of Keyplay, a SaaS solution to help B2B marketers make their go-to-market more efficient. In this episode, Adam talks about how he's taken 3 companies to over $1 million in ARR, his process that's allowed him to reliably find product market fit again and again, and the critical mistakes he sees founders always make and how you can avoid them. So here's our episode with Adam Schoenfeld. Hey Adam, what's up, man? I'm really excited to have you on the show. I can't believe I've known you for as long as I have, but now we get to officially talk on the record. So how you doing?
Oh my gosh, putting the pressure on, talking on the record. We've had a lot of good conversations over the years, and neither of us have aged in the, 6, 7, 8 years we've known each other. So that's a nice little feature.
Yeah, I think we both look identical to the way we did in, I think, the 2017 we met.
100%.
Bonus on us. Yeah. Although I'm still shocked at how that has gone for you, being that you've founded 4 companies, 3 have hit $1 million in ARR. I don't know. We might have to do a different episode on your secret to longevity. But first, I want to welcome you in. I'm excited to talk to you about Keyplay and some of the other things you've launched over the years.
Absolutely.
I think we met back in 2017 in a past role for me where we brought on your company SiftRock to do a very specific thing. And it worked great. You were acquired by Drift at that point, and now you've spent some time on Keyplay and PeerSignal. So for background, do you want to maybe walk people through? You did not have a direct path into Keyplay, let's say. It was a little bit of circuitous to get in there. So maybe you want to talk through that first journey and how that looked and how you got here?
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to. Because I think it's a little bit non-traditional. We started with something called PeerSignal, which was basically me writing content and analyzing what was going on in the SaaS industry. And then we used that as a way to both build an audience and discover what problem we wanted to solve and what product we wanted to build. And that's what became Keyplay. And so we still run PeerSignal. We still have a big content motion here. We still think a lot about building community and building our brand that way. Now we've been for 2 years out in market with the SaaS product that came from that. So instead of, identifying a customer problem and then going and solving that, we actually kind of reversed it where we went and engaged with a particular audience, knowing we wanted to start a company eventually, but it's like, let's go talk about go-to-market. Let's go talk about a broad range of problems, and then let's see what turns up. And that led us to finding this problem with Keyplay, which is about helping companies model and their ICP and prioritize their target accounts. And I think that it's not for everybody, right? But I think it's a possible way into a market that you can pursue.
How did you think through that decision to start from the idea of this is the industry we want to go after? You basically built a business to learn about it first. So it's great. You almost, I don't know how much revenue came off of Pure Insight, but you almost monetized the actual discovery part of figuring out your company first.
Yeah. Yeah. Very little revenue, but we did do a few little controlled experiments where we'd sell things and trying to test things along the way. I think a lot of times founding is very specific to the founders, like the path you take. Like, what's your circle of competence and where are you in your life and where are you in your career? And so for me and Andrew, my co-founder, we knew that this was generally the space we wanted to go into because I had already started a couple companies in this space in broadly sales and marketing tech. And so I was like, I want to go into a space where I have a good understanding of the dynamics and where it's in my circle of competence. I think the odds of success will be higher if I do that. And it's a passion of mine. So we kind of drew that box, even though we didn't know which particular problem that we wanted to solve. So I think that was the first framing. And then it was the two of us wanted to work together, Andrew and I. And we didn't want to kind of just go work in our day jobs forever. We wanted to get going, motion creates emotion type thing. Let's get out there and start doing stuff. And so we started just creating content. We put together these little data sets. So it's natural that we got into a business that's very data heavy. We put together these data sets to track SaaS companies and what their go-to-markets were doing. Did they have a community? Were they doing PLG? What were their pricing strategies? And we collect all this data, make it available, and then do analysis and share our learnings. And so that kind of got the flywheel going of, sharing this stuff, and people would come back to us and we'd have conversations, and then people would see what we were doing and start to ask us, oh, could you do something like that, but for my problem over here? So it started creating this really interesting process of building an audience, and then from that audience, discovering problems that we might want to go solve.
Did it come from the idea for Keyplay come from discussions you had bringing this information forward, or was it insights you gleaned when you were analyzing company sets and stuff like that?
It was a kind of a combination. It's hard to go back and pull one exact thread,
Right.
but I do remember one.
History.
Exactly. The founders love doing that. We're the best at that.
It's a straight line from starting to success, no bumps. It was wonderful.
I had this vision, and then I hit 100 million of ARR and, all these things. I remember there was one email that we got, and it was from a guy named Ryan Narod at Mutiny. He was at Mutiny at the time, head of marketing there. And he said, hey, I was looking at your, SaaS index that you put together. At Mutiny, we sell to companies. A lot of the companies we sell to are on that list, but we have a slightly different way that we would want to build our target market. Mm-hmm. Is there something custom you could do kind of like this, but for us? And we're like, hey, but don't you have 6sense and Zoom Info and all these other tools to do that? And he's like, we've tried, so that email really kicked off a big aha for us, which was that there was still an unsolved problem in that whole world of figuring out who's your ICP and how to put together that list of accounts. So there was that point. And then we had like little inklings kind of around that were coming in. So I think a lot of the inbound emails were actually the biggest source of product inspiration for us.
Interesting. Yeah, I think if you look at product folks in general, right, a lot of kind of the inspiration for a product or whether you are founding a company or building a product internally to a company is you talk to users, you talk to prospective users, understand problem and build around that. You just took a very unique way of getting there.
Right. We kind of let those users come to us with their problems. And then we sort of sorted through the ones that were they interesting for us? Did it kind of fit with something we thought we could do? Did it sort of fit with how we saw the market? So, and then once we had one of those or two of those, then we actually went to Ryan at one point and we said, hey, would you pay us for 6 months to work on that?
Right.
And like, we'll really be scrappy. Like we had an Airtable that was the deliverable. We wrote some scripts behind the scenes. Like there was no SaaS app. We did a very scrappy version. We got paid for a 6-month engagement on that. And then at that point, we put up kind of like a page on PeerSignal that said, I'm sure the messaging was terrible, but it kind of described like, if you have this shape problem, click here and email us. Yeah. And we got a few more from that. And then that was how the design partner program started.
I think probably everyone who's been around long enough has seen, there's been multiple times where we've tried, let's throw up the raw idea of the thing. And it's really funny because it seems like such a basic test. Let's just put this basic offer up. It won't be super acute. It won't be super well detailed. Probably like you said, the messaging's off. But I feel like that is such a good bellwether test because if you have to force it, if you're not getting a pretty quick, decent response, I don't know, feels like high likelihood that maybe you're going to just be shouting into the abyss. But if you get people jumping into it and just pushing and going, you still have work to do, but you probably have a much easier, more doable job on your hands. Is that kind of how you guys looked at it there?
I totally agree with that. I think you're totally on with it because you want people that are in such acute pain on something that even if your messaging's terrible, even if you don't really have a product, that they're willing to raise their hand and say, yeah, I need that solved.
Right.
And I think that helps you find that and match to those people. And it doesn't mean your whole market will have that kind of acute pain. But if nobody has it and nobody can kind of see through your weak messaging and your terrible UI or whatever your V0 is, then I think that's a problem.
If you have a few people who can see through and get I see the vision, I need that, with base level kind of no iteration work, then you probably can go a lot further with more. It's funny. I remember years and years ago before COVID, outside of tech, I ran a festival company that basically ran beer and food festivals. It was a lot of fun, actually. It was a fun hobby that kind of got out of hand. But we were putting on events and we had a huge following. We had lucked into social at the right time and we built a gigantic social media following, and we couldn't convert it into anything beyond, like, we were inching along at barely break even revenue. I think we lose money some quarters, make it a little bit the following quarter. We were on life support. And we looked at it and said, we're just doing nothing different. It shouldn't be this hard. And then we had this kind of idea to shift a little bit about how we're going. Like you said, kind of based zero messaging. We said, what's different? We like cheese too. Let's see if people respond to us focusing the event on food pairing with beer, and we're going to add just local cheese into it. And it was one of those things just so binary took off that you went like, God, how did I miss this for so long? What have I been thinking doing this, trying to do this without this? And we started to sell out months in advance, and it became this easy walk in the park. And we had hardship afterwards still, but seeing it was like very base level, emotional level understanding that I received over time of this is what product market fit looks like. And it's not always easy, but it's doable.
I think it's so much of that in getting to product market fit. I mean, I think I've done this I've done 4 companies, one that totally failed and 3 that have, that crossed $1 million of ARR, and one that's still going. And
it's a good rate, by the way. That's pretty good.
Only one that got to 10, past 10, but this one will just give us some time.
I have no doubt about that.
There's so much of that, just the product market fit doesn't show up on the spreadsheet. Like it is this emotional thing. It is this kind of human thing that you have to like try to read the body language and how are they leaning in? What are they saying kind of between the lines? And, it's interesting in your finding the cheese thing, right? Because you knew you didn't have it before.
Right.
Right. You could just tell. And like, when you have it and when you don't, which is what's so infuriating about it.
Yeah.
But it's so hard to put your finger on.
Yeah. We could see you sit there and we're like, this is halfway there. People come, we inch along, but this is a hobby right now, not a business. If the IRS ever were to come to us, I don't know if you really can call it a business, guys. But yeah, once you hit that point, that's really interesting that you guys saw that more from throw up the landing page, see if anyone bites, and if they see through it, if a few people you can walk into a semi-easy deal, you got something. And you guys went to the design partner level of this. So tell us about that. Like, how'd you construct, that was the path forward?
Like I mentioned, Ryan was the first one to buy, and we're like, pay us, I think it was 8 or 10K for 6 months. Because knew enough, we kind of envisioned this being sort of like a 20 to 50K ACV product, sort of at steady state. Like if we took to the logical extreme, like we solve this problem really well and we have a solution we can deliver repeatedly, that's what we thought. So we're like, okay, let's start sort of in the lower end of that. Let's start with like lower the bar on commitment, but we wanted some commercial aspect to it. I think some people will do design partners where you're literally just building around them and trying to solve the problem for them and not collecting any money, or maybe you have an LOI for some future thing. For us, it was paramount to have a money in exchange for doing that. And that's, I think, a choice you can go either way on. But for me, that was like really important because I wasn't confident without that they were really voting that this was a need.
Right.
So we did these like 6-month scrappy. It was like Airtable plus a little bit of Adam as a service, plus Andrew would kind of be like whipping up different scripts, and we were kind of building the back end like as we were doing these. And so again, just like the messaging was very rough, what we were delivering as a product was really rough, but we were able to I think with having our hands on the keyword and being very white glove, like deliver a solution to the stated problem. And just learn a ton. So I think by the time we ended up building the full app, we had about 7 or 8 of those design partners, and we had started converting them to annuals, and we had started like showing them, hey, this is what the product's going to be. So that was really like maybe phase 2. If phase 1 was kind of discovering the problem, then phase 2 was, okay, this is the problem we're going to solve. Let's get some people signed up to like work with us on that.
Can you get people paying you for it and really on the standard SaaS annual agreement? It's really funny that you bring up like it was all Airtable and pieced together, because I think a lot of people miss that you don't need the shiny MVP. Doesn't just mean like minimal viable kind of crappy. It means you need to give the experience, but you don't need the slick UI. Maybe it means you need to deliver the value and check if that is something, like you said, people paying for it.
Exactly.
It doesn't have to be like, you guys have a great UI now. I actively enjoy using the product, but you don't need that early on. It reminds me early on. So we've spent, I don't know, what is it? 5 years now, 6 years before I got here, investing in kind of AI, because our thesis around kind of session replay and analytics was there's a lot of data there. It's how do you speed up insights and how do you get, more actionable stuff out of it without just having to sit there and watch 100,000 sessions or something. And I remember very early on when I got here, we went over to one of our customers and we showed them like the earliest iteration of what has become our AI solutions. And we basically had a spreadsheet that listed several sessions that we were able to surface that showed real user problems that were affecting the business. Like they sold travel tours and they monetized a lot around add-ons after the initial purchase. And basically one of the things we surfaced, and we were in a meeting with 5 or 6 PMs and a couple of business leaders. And we went through and they're like, yeah, we know about that problem. Oh, we know about that problem, but like, how do you guys know about that problem? And we were able to surface it very quickly through the AI. And then finally, one of them we hit, 1 out of 5 that we showed them, they just went, oh my God, hold on a minute, stop. And 2 people ran out of the room and they ran back in with like 8 more people. And we're like, oh, so you'd pay for this, huh? Like we have been investing in this for 2 months. It has cost us so much money. You just solved it for us. Oh my God. And like full stop. So that was the kind of light bulb. Let's invest more here and let's build up the UI and really ram it home. But it is great to see those kind of early traction moments.
Those moments are so great and they're so fleeting. I mean, they're so hard. And you have so many that aren't like that to get the few that are. Absolutely love that. I mean, if you can get that kind of response, you really know you're onto something, even in a small number, because
And
there's got to be more people that would have that response, right? Like when you have one.
right. Like early on, you don't need, I think the mistake people, you don't need everyone to buy your software. You need what? You need to get like to 1 million, then you need to get to 10, and then you need to figure out where you go from there maybe. But you can build tight first. And it seems like you guys had this great thesis of let's go talk to the market. Let's find a way to do it as a business almost, and then build the product on top of that. And you said the design piece, and you iterated. It's just like each step, you're just moving closer and closer at learning more and getting wider. So now you have design partners delivering the value, and you're testing it works because people are paying you for this. So where did it go from there? I assume they kept paying you, some of them, and you were able to sign them on, right?
Most of them stuck around, and kind of stuck on for an annual contract.
Which
once
is
we
good
had
signal.
the product. Yeah, that was good. And, then we got to the work of actually building what would be a solution that we could sell to more of the fatter part of the market, right? Because we had these like people who were in acute pain, innovators, like if you're a Jeffrey Moore fan, right? Like the very beginning of that curve, not even close to the chasm, but way left. The innovators within the innovators probably were those first 6 or 8 customers. And then it was like, okay, we got to kind of move ourselves to the things that are going to make it actually sellable and usable for people who, need normal stuff like integrations to the CRM, right? I mean, we're doing stuff with accounts. How could we not talk back and forth with the CRM? Right. Yeah. So that was like, those kind of things started to get, the UI for how do you like find new accounts and pull them in. So we just started to think through all the workflows. And what was nice is having done it in a combination of Airtable plus like we really understood the workflow pretty well. And I think our V1s on a lot of this stuff like have stuck around 2 years later. I think there's some that we didn't get right for sure, but I think that helped because we were so deep into those design partner engagements for 6-7 months that we had a good sense of like, okay, how can we prioritize the actual features now that we need to go build to make this more sellable?
And so from there, you found a nice way to get product market fit. And now you're sitting here, and I assume from there, you've just straight lined. We talked about it. It's founding to straight line to what, IPO in a couple of years?
In like 5 years or so, that's what I want to just tell you when I come on the podcast again. But, it wasn't actually. So the design partner thing went really well because people were paying, they were seeing value. The qualitative responses were really good. They were saying they wanted to buy it and renew once we had the product built out, but then we came to market. So then it's like, okay, introducing Keyplay. In fact, many of those design partners, we didn't have the name figured out. So then it's like, okay, we're introducing Keyplay. We had raised money basically on the backs of some successful design partners and repeat founder stuff. So we'd raised the seed and we go and we announce that we exist. And we kind of tell our story and we show our product, all the things you do. You get a website, you get a nice little demo video, you have a form where they can come request a demo. At least in our world, we're more of a sales-led model than a self-serve. And to be honest, those first 2 quarters, we thought things were just going to kind of, accelerate. And it was a lot of grinding. We were adding customers, but the design partner thing maybe tricked us a little bit because people had bought so quickly and were so active. And then we got out there and it was just like, we didn't quite have it locked into gear. And I think there was some macro issues going on right then. This is the very start of 2023.
Yeah, not a great time to be founding a SaaS company.
Yeah. I mean, SaaS budgets just kind of went right down. Yeah. Everything's getting a lot of scrutiny. But I think there were also we had maybe, underestimated the strength of the competitors. Underestimated how many existing tools people had that we had to position around. Underestimated maybe that the number of features that we needed to sort of land to go from customer 10 to customer 50, and that was a great learning because it was a little humble pie at that moment to really like force us to, you know, focus on those fundamental questions and make sure we were sharpening them and not weren't allowed to get ahead of ourselves.
Right. Not to be trite, but like it takes friction to sharpen a knife, right? You don't do that on a smooth towel, you do it on a whetstone. But it's funny because I remember, like I said, we've known each other for a long time now, and you built this audience of marketing leaders very early on. I remember you coming talking to a CMOs group I was in and all sorts of stuff. But you built the audience and you were talking publicly a lot about this stuff. And I think it's one thing that maybe founders and product people who are launching new products miss is that a lot of these things that look like they just went smoothly up and to the right, you don't see the friction behind the curtain there. Because by all intents and purposes, it looked like you guys were killing it from the outset. Like everything, I saw people talking about you. I saw you getting huge traction, talking on LinkedIn and everywhere. Hopefully, some people can take away from this that a little heartening that they're not the only ones to struggle right when they launch to try and scale.
Yeah,
It's
for sure.
even people who appear really successful. It can be a little hard.
Yeah. I think you can stub your toe or slip it like any of those little mini moments, phase shifts,
Yeah.
right? From like exploration to design partner to launch to initial scale to, next scale.
Yeah.
Like things change and you have to like continually adapt. And I think we probably had set the expectations really high too out of the gate. And then they were okay. Like we were bringing in new customers. So just, it wasn't crickets, but it wasn't like, it didn't just fly off the shelves those first couple of quarters. And then I think it started to lock into gear and we started to like adjust, especially honestly, I think a lot was like related to how our sales process worked, given the dynamics of our space. Like I think we had sort of underestimated the burden of proof we would need to show during the process. So we got a lot tighter in, the inner workings between product and go to market, I think was where a lot of the breakthroughs came.
Yeah. It's interesting. I'm curious to dig into like what do you think led to some of that early friction? Because we had a guy named Sean Lorenz on a couple episodes ago, and he talked about one of the big things we pulled away from that was it's not just about the right product, but it's about channel market fit. And it's about you might have a great vision for where you're going to be, but not selling too far down your roadmap because then people are like, I don't want what's now. I want what you said you're going to have in a year. Have you identified like what some of those problems might have been or how people might look at avoiding that or lessons to be taken away? Or is it just a matter of you're going to run into some kind of friction and it's going to be company dependent on what happens and you just got to figure it out?
I think it's company independent for us. I think it was a combination of the macro change and then just the particular competitive dynamics that we were in and how much kind of proof we had to show to earn a place in the stack. And those things like fed each other big time because if the CFO says, hey, your budget for MarTech is like now half or whatever they cut it by, and you have other vendors that you're sort of trying to figure out an approach to. Like we talked recently and I saw, you have several vendors in this general space that we're in. Right. And so everybody has to kind of think about like, if you're doing ABM or you're going up market, how are you going to put those pieces together? And I think we hadn't just figured out how to show and prove that we had this like important piece of the puzzle that was going to be a game changer versus the way that they might be doing it, like by stitching together other tools or some manual work.
No, that makes sense. I might be slightly difficult as a marketing person to sell to as well, because I hold a general thesis that like marketing tools or marketing tactics tend to over time asymptote in effectiveness. And so by the time you've built the really big platform that does everything, likelihood is a lot of people are using that, and that's how you've gotten to that point. And now that tactic probably is a little bit less effective. So I tend to be someone who looks to how do we build our own things internally and leverage solutions where we can, but there's always some kind of custom stuff. But I do think there are certain things that just make fundamental sense. And one is, in this case, knowing who you sell to and having a great grasp and actionable knowledge of who that is. That seems a lot very durable. It's a cool thing there. Back to you said you launched into this post-ZIRP world where everyone's much tighter with budgets. I'm sure that hurt for a second there, but do you think generally that maybe helped as well? Because you publicly have this thesis on just how go-to-market has changed and the spray and pray of the teens doesn't really work anymore. Yeah. Do you think that combined where maybe it hurt for a second to launch into post-ZIRP, but in reality, this reality is probably far more beneficial for companies like yours?
I do. I think it's way healthier overall, probably.
Yeah.
Is,
Yes.
I mean, the correction hurts, but I think the new normal is probably better than the crazy growth at all costs era, just in terms of sustainability of businesses and people's jobs, and like how we go from here, I think is probably better. But of course, these, like, when you have to snap back to something, it can be painful. And yes, for us, it's a bit of a double-edged sword, or there's two sides to the coin, maybe is a better way of saying it, which is the the fact that there's more scrutiny for our customers means they need to do the job that we help them solve better and better, which is like they need to pick the right accounts to target. And it's just, if you're doing spray and pray and you have a lot of money to spend, you don't really care about how effective your marketing and sales dollars are, you can just gloss over it a little bit more. But if you're putting scrutiny on that and you want to have rigor and precision, then the problem we solve becomes more important. So yes, I think
Yeah.
we're probably beneficiaries of it to some extent, but it's got two sides to it for sure.
Yeah. No, and maybe it's just helpful to hit on a quick second of what's the basis for kind of your thesis here on the market, and why does this change, and what's important now? What doesn't work anymore that people maybe used to do?
Well, if I think of the way it's gone historically, right, there was a big wave of just get online. And I think that was like, get a website, start doing email, start doing all these things. And then the next logical thing was like, do more volume, do more activity, right? Just crank, right? More ads, more clicks, more emails, right? And I think we went through a lot of that. And I think what's happened is the return on that, on each incremental email or activity, goes down when that happens because buyers are flooded. And so then it's like, well, what's the only next thing you can do is you can get more focused, and you can like pick who are going to be the best buyers for you. And then you can focus your resources on those folks. And I like this idea of like surround sound, like creating a surround sound effect within a smaller room. And that's where I think you can have more results per every like unit of input, and you can channel your creative energy because you're thinking more carefully about these are the people and the segments and the types of companies that we want to serve. And so I think it can actually unlock you creatively, and you can come up with better ideas, and you can create better content. So I think it's like this whole mindset shift that's kind of I'm seeing happening. And I think it's just like this natural evolution of, being in this digital world where activity can just kind of go to infinity. And now I think we're questioning that and thinking about like other ways to go about it.
I think the parallel to concept of infinity is actually a really interesting one, because like in the late aughts, I joined a company. It was a really early stage startup and is now a multi-billion-dollar public company. And they've been, eminently successful. And we built the go-to-market on the back of what was then innovatively called email nurture, right? I think now we call it email spam. But it was that thing like, oh, we can just go do more emails and buy more leads and send more emails. And it worked linearly, but it worked because very few people were doing it. But the concept of infinity starts to happen where like at some point you just hit a volume of this noise in your inbox, in this case, where it doesn't matter if 20 more companies start sending a lot more email to me. It becomes, I don't notice because I just don't even pay attention to my email anymore. And how do you get around that is, like you said, you get more picky with it, and you be aware of who actually could benefit, who your best buyers, and how do you reach them in a new, authentic way. Not always a topic for product people, I don't think, but something to keep in mind is if you are launching a product, how you communicate and how you drive the go-to-market is a huge part of product success. It's not just build the product and they'll come, as you found out, right? You have to go figure out how to get there too.
Yeah. Well, I think the best companies, they figure out how to make those things work together, right? Like the product and the go-to-market are one unified thing. They're not this disconnected, like, hey, okay, we've got a good product. Now let's go add some sales and marketing.
Right. Now let's go bolt on go-to-market to it. Like you have to think about how all this stuff in congruence. All right, let's go on a trip for a second, Adam. Let's go all the way back to the same time I'm talking about here. But you founded another of your companies that made it to 1 million ARR and Simply Measured. But you basically went on, but on the back of that, you ended up on the board of a company called Visible, which I think is one of these early on companies that did focus on how do you get a little bit more accurate about the stuff? How do you focus it a little bit deeper? But you talked about your role there was to basically help the founder with cautionary tales of what you experienced, and that maybe the experience was even a little painful for you. But I guess what were these insights you brought forward? I don't mean to rip the scab off old wounds here, but
you can do it, Jeff. It's fine.
I appreciate it, Adam.
Well, the story of Simply Measured is a really interesting one. I could probably like write a lot of chapters of a book on it. The three founders were really young when we started it, and we came into a big wave within what was happening in social media in like 2010. Obviously, like I think Twitter had been around for a few years and Facebook and all those things, but companies were starting to get into it. And we built an analytics product for social media, particularly for organic social media. And we flew. I mean, we went from 1 to 5 million, I think, in like 15 months. It was a little slower getting to 1 million, but once we caught that wave, we were flying.
Right.
And, we raised a lot of money. And around 10, it started to get harder. And, we sort of ended up sort of around 20, but that 10 to 20, we hit a lot of problems. And I think a lot of it was, I was a young founder. I didn't really know how to scale teams. I took a lot of bad advice. I didn't trust my gut. There was a lot of like things that I did as we started to grow that I hope I get another chance at Keyplay to achieve those levels of scale so that I can try again. But it's interesting because we did so great in like serving the customer and finding product market fit early and getting it out there. We had a great brand. We had hundreds of thousands of free users, all this stuff. But then all the challenges came in. How do you grow the executive team, and how are we going to like scale the company and the culture, and how are we going to figure out how to make this company work at that scale and deliver it was very messy and very hard, particularly because we were growing fast. So I made a lot of mishires. I made a lot of bad decisions against my gut. I distanced my relationship with my co-founders. I could give you a checklist of things not to do. So I think when I came on the board at Visible, I can maybe help Aaron. He already was better tuned than I was, but I maybe could help with, avoiding some of those things as they were, scaling through those different levels.
Right. Yeah. And that's at heart, if you're building a company or you're building just a new product, like we've talked about, it's a lot of these problems come up of, I feel product people, especially product leaders, it's not just the product, it's everything around it. You need to be thinking about how do you interact with engineering, with the exec team, with marketing, with sales. So a lot of these lessons stay the same I think it is important to listen to your gut. You mentioned the last one in passing, but there's been a lot of decisions where at heart, when I look back at some of the biggest problems I've run into, it has been places where I did what maybe was the academically correct thing or the thing that like was generally like, oh yeah, this is just what you do at this point.
Yes.
But looking back, I was always uncomfortable with it. And then I realized that's the thing that bit me in the ass.
That's right. That's generally my advice to founders, especially younger founders like I was then. It's like, tune into your intuition. If you got to that level, if you built a business to that point, you probably understand something about your market and your product and your customer and your particular business. And I think I tried to take, the academic answer or the conventional answer and apply it instead of like thinking through it and checking with what fit my values. And also, like I drifted from my co-founders in that, where the earlier days, the three of us were really good at going through those discussions together, which is a big lesson I applied at SiftRock and now at Keyplay, is like being in lockstep with the co-founders the whole way. Like every problem, everything that's good, we're locked and loaded.
Well, a couple months back, we had Non-Yu on. He's the head of product over at Linear, and he had a great point on this, which was basically at times you have to have an opinion. And you're building a startup, right? You're building something new, and you are trying to drive probably like asymmetric value, or not asymmetric, but you're trying to drive huge amounts of value very quickly. And you're not going to do that if you just take a kind of portfolio management approach or an index fund approach. You probably have to take some risk. And part of that's going to be, if you just do the academically correct answer every time, you're going to get the average return. So at times it pays off. My intuition is that this is actually different than what everyone says. We're going to do this. And I guess the trick is find how to either get signal really fast that you're wrong, fail quickly, fail extreme, and just get out and do something new, or find that you were more right than in the past and you now have an advantage.
It's a tough balance because you want to be grounded on the truth of the market, but you also want to like follow your intuition. I think it's just like you're constantly kind of checking in with where you are in that and making sure you're not, overdoing it. Like your gut can be wrong sometimes too. So I struggle with it to this day, but I agree. I think I'd rather be wrong.
That all the time. Be careful. Like, okay, let's come back to today now. You, as we've talked about, you've now founded 4 companies, 3 of which have hit $1 million ARR. I think some of them could have even gone farther, but you're in one now, and one you sold to a pretty successful company. I guess the question people are going to be asking is like, what is the secret here? What's the secret to finding product market fit? What's your little silver bullet unlock here that you can tell us all that will make us all magically successful?
No silver bullets, as you know. Actually, I worked for a guy named David Cancel at Drift, and he used to say that all the time about no silver
Yeah.
bullets. I think in some of the Buffett and Munger books, there's a lot of stuff about that. Just getting up 1% better every day.
Yeah.
I think probably the main thing in my experience of getting product market fit, getting to like 1 million of ARR, if that's sort of how you think of product market fit, maybe it's earlier in some businesses, is to really early on, like, get as much clarity as you can about who that customer is, and who you seek to serve and what's the problem. I mean, just those fundamentals. Like, I don't think there's a bunch of fanciness to it. Charlie Munger has a quote about, you want to sell something that you would buy if you were on the other side.
Yeah.
And I think about that quote all the time because I just want to calibrate with my gut if this is feeling like we're bringing something forward that's making a difference. And I think if you're really grounded on that, and I think that's the key to the whole thing. I think it's shockingly simple, but it's hard.
How do you find your cheese, right? How do you find the service that Mutiny needs, and then it turns out 6 more people need it, and 100 more people? How do you find the thing that people are going to take your crappy messaging or your unbaked messaging and see through it to the real vision? And there's no easy unlock there. I think you had a cool tactic with PeerSignal, right? Go in, build something that's going to build you a community so you can just talk to a ton of knowledgeable people who you want to sell to. It also builds in distribution. Did you find that was helpful in distribution at all? The PeerSignal
100%. Yes.
Yeah. You had an
1000%.
inroad already to these people.
Yeah. We had 10,000 email subscribers when we launched or something like that.
Yeah. Nice. So I think last topic I want to cover, we've alluded to Sifrock. That was how we met, actually. Is I had this very particular problem at my last company that I was trying to figure out how to solve, and you guys had the exact product that did exactly what I needed. It was fantastic, and I stumbled upon it. I don't even remember how. You guys ended up taking it, so far, and then you got acquired by Drift. And this is when Drift was the hotness in Boston. That was like the startup you wanted to be at. But what is that like on the other side, like being acquired by a company that has that kind of like momentum and that size, and maybe a couple people? Is there any kind of takeaways to how maybe founders or product people can approach that and de-risk it?
Yeah, there's a lot. I think that there's, should you do the transaction, what that looks like, and then there's kind of what happens after. I think when you're evaluating it, I think a lot of people miss the sort of non-financial parts of the decision. Like, what's my life going to look like after? And how's that different? And how's this going to change how I sort of think about my identity? Because for a lot of us, you're like, I'm a founder, and this is like an important identity thing, right? And so there's a lot of change that happens after that, so that I think people sometimes gloss over because they're sort of focused on what's the number, what are the deal mechanics, what are the economics here, what's my earn out, like, which is all important, but I do think there's another side of that to think about. And then after you get into these things, it's super interesting. We were acquired by, like you said, they were a startup, but they were much bigger. They had, several hundred people. We were 5 people. We were a little profitable bootstrap thing, right, that they plugged in, and they were flying. And there's a lot to manage, like, as you come into those, to like educate everybody on like, oh, well, what does this new product that we bought do? And who are these people? And I'm sure I didn't get it right, but I think there's a lot of like, that work's really important. I think if you want that thing to work out, it's like making sure people know what it is and the salespeople know how to sell it, and the better together story. And I think that's like an important thing to sign up for, probably if you're a founder or an executive coming across with the deal, is to think about that stuff. And maybe even during the deal process, like, talk about how that's going to look. I'm not sure I asked all those questions up front, but we did. That was, I think, maybe surprising or new for me to navigate some of those things.
Yeah. In theory, hopefully, given the trajectory of Keyplay, something you won't have to think about because you'll just IPO and ride off into the sunset. And
I hope to run this for a long time. I really do.
Yeah. No, it's a great company. I don't want to take your whole day. I'm sure you got a lot going on with growing a company at that level. So I'll let you go, but I really appreciate you coming on today, Adam. It's fantastic to catch up. And I know we've known each other for a while, but I haven't gotten to dig in and learn all this stuff. And if people are looking to reach out, you can't be missed on LinkedIn. So if people want to congratulate you or find out more, or even ask questions, you're all over the place on LinkedIn. So I assume that's possibly a good channel.
LinkedIn's my main place. If you do connect with me, you'll be subjected to my musings. So be warned.
I highly recommend it. But thanks, man. I appreciate you coming on. And yeah, hopefully we can catch up again soon.
Great to see you, Jeff. Thanks for it.